And let's start off with a salute to our friends in law enforcement. Really appreciate everybody who stopped out at Independence Indoor Shooting. It was great to see Mike in Meridian and his neighbor who came by and shot, and so many other folks that had a chance to stop by and really express their support for the Second Amendment. I want to thank Independence Indoor Shooting. We're going to be back there in a couple weeks to crown the 2019 Girls with Guns. You have a few people that are running away with it. Still time to collect your votes. Still time to make sure that right girl with that right gun gets the right vote. And speaking of which, also coming up, thanks to Cap Credit Union, T. Mazda Subaru, we're going to be at Nampa Christian coming up on Friday. Promote our schools, secure our future. Really looking forward to spending time with everybody and just getting back to school, back to the kids. And the like. News over the weekend, Congress comes back. We'll take your calls, as always, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I guess we could give them a wish list. We already have, really, a wish list for the Idaho legislature, and that is repeal the grocery tax, make sure people aren't taxed out of their homes, and the list continues. And coming up, we're going to be interviewing, we'll be speaking with the governor. We'll also have a really special program where Dave Petzo interviews me. For those of you that say that we don't talk a lot about ourselves, we will have that for you as well. And again, we will be going to Washington in a couple weeks, thanks to our friends at the Federation for American Immigration Reform they are funding that trip. All right, enough of the announcements. Let's get to some news that really is crazy. The President of the United States, it was disclosed over the weekend, had a secret Camp David meeting with the Taliban. The same Taliban that continued to bomb, the same Taliban that helped Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, the same Taliban that they hate women, they treat women as property, they treat everybody else horrifically, right? So the president was going to invite them to Camp David. And again, Donald Trump is an outlier. So he runs it like it is. But your thoughts on that, we'll get to some of the sound and the reaction coming up. But initially, I have to say, my country, right or wrong, my president, right or wrong. But the bad call about this is Afghanistan is just a bad neighborhood. You know, you ever been to a place and you're driving along with your family, your friends, or maybe you're with a group of buddies, and all of a sudden you take a wrong turn and another wrong turn, and then you're in a bad neighborhood? Afghanistan is just one bad big neighborhood. It's always been a bad big neighborhood, right? Afghanistan is a slum. Oh, Kevin Miller, you can't say that. Look at how they treat women. Look at how they mutilate men and women. The repressive Taliban-induced regime. They don't call the Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for nothing. It is the graveyard of empires because you have people living in the Stone Age, wanting to continue to live in the Stone Age. Now, as long as you're not funding and fighting and giving refuge to Al-Qaeda, you can go live in a hut. You can do without indoor plumbing. I don't care, right? I don't really care. But the President of the United States bringing the Taliban to Camp David, is that disturbing? Mayor Pete Buttigieg had this to say on NBC's Meet the Press.
Puzzled by the idea that you would invite the Taliban to the United States on the eve of the 9/11 anniversary without having a rock-solid way forward, or that you would do it at all.
Well, everybody's a Monday morning quarterback, and that's what I really love about being a consultant. You know, my wife, Mrs. Miller, says to me, Kevin Miller, you need to be a consultant. Well, first of all, you'd have to have some credibility to be a consultant. Mayor Pete, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Mayor Pete, you don't have any credibility. You can't even handle the garbage men in South Bend, Indiana. How are you going to handle the Taliban? By the way, we'll get to Mayor Pete. He's a Christian, and he has a lecture for Christians that don't agree with his lifestyle, that don't agree with him kissing his husband. By the way, I don't know who's the wife and who's the husband, but that's my own problem, right? Right? I'm just a confused young man, or not so young anymore. So back to this issue where on the eve of 9/11, well, the president's thinking big. He wants to end the war in Afghanistan. You talk to people that have been to Iraq. You talk to people that have been to Afghanistan, and we have We have a lot of people that did active duty time there, that did active reserve time there. You know, how many people remember the last deployment to Afghanistan? It was the helicopter unit from Gowan Field. I think that was the last time we had, what was it, the Apaches? Right? Those folks went in there. One of them got injured. One of them got shot. It's a dangerous place. So do we continue to send our troops there? And if not, my biggest fear is this. You have a lot of people. It's been, what, generations, almost 20 years since we've been in Afghanistan, who have come up through the ranks. You have beautiful young children where we're trying to teach them our way of life, right? Our way of life, where women are treated equally. The Taliban come in, the first thing they do, they destroy schools, they do everything else. And it's not good for those young ladies. Is it in our interest to protect them, or is it in our interest to cut and run? And I say that with all due respect, to leave that country, to leave Iraq. Let the Middle East just cannibalize itself. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo from Fox News Sunday, which you can catch right here on KIDO Talk Radio. What say you?
I've watched the Afghan government behave in ways that I think indicates that nearly every Afghan understands that this violence, these wars can't continue. No, I use the word hope because we're going to continue to try and drive towards this outcome, because we also want to deliver, most importantly, on behalf of the American people.
Man, I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope that my creditors will be paid for, that I can just sit back and stare into my backyard and look at my fence that needs to be painted. Or that I get a chance to talk to my new neighbors that just moved in. They listen to the program. Good morning, neighbors. Hello, neighbor. I wish a lot of things, but Afghanistan is just a bad hood. It is a bad place with bad people, and the Afghan government, they are not nice. Remember the corruption from Karzai? You remember that guy Karzai? Who kind of looks, he was the former mayor or the former president of Afghanistan. What did Karzai do? Karzai was a bum. Karzai was bad news. And we bribed him, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDR time, 613. But think, again, when you're thinking of Afghanistan, do you want the Taliban here in Camp David during the anniversary of 9/11? Again, the president calls his own shots. No one else would have enough guts to do it. Here is Congressman Adam Kinzinger on the Trump-Taliban meeting that was called off because the Taliban continued to attack. And remember what old Obama did. Old Obama had a farm. You remember that. We pieced out of Iraq, and the whole thing was taken over by a new group called ISIS.
The Taliban is a stateless organization that oppresses women, that kills innocent people, that blows up people without consideration, whether they're children, no matter.
Wait a minute, that blows up people without consideration? Well, that's what most terrorists and bad people do. Now at 580-5436, do we eradicate them? Do we take them down? What do we do? Representative Kinzinger, you're a veteran. You ran for Congress on being a veteran. You're the belle of the ball when it comes to the liberal media because you're a Republican and you'll go on the shows and rip the president. Really?
Or what religion they are or anything, and to put them at a place of honor in Camp David shouldn't have happened. So he's right to cancel it, and I hope he never reschedules.
I hope he never reschedules it. We will talk a little bit more about that as well. By the way, Congress back in session, looking at gun control legislation, another mass shooting. And we all know the answer to this. And sometimes I just love to hear your voice as opposed to mine. But I mean, does anybody have faith that Congress is going to pass laws? I was listening to one of the shows over the weekend. That's how I try and get out of things to do around the house. Well, I got to work. Dorothy. What do you mean working? You're on the recliner there, going back and forth, watching the shows, yelling at the TV. That's work. And you had one of the congressmen or one of the senators that are the squishy, fishy, wishy Republicans saying, well, we better get along with this or we're going to have more massive gun legislation. So you either agree to unconstitutional background checks or we're going to confiscate your guns. We're going to do something that the gun people won't like. Really? So why do we elect you to not to stand up for us? Why do we elect you to go along to get along? Didn't what happened in 2016 prove the point? But going back to Congress, hey, Congress, we've got a list for you. We've got a list for you when we're talking about things to do and, representing us. You make $170,000 a year. That puts you in the top 1%, right? So I would like some return on investment. Is it asking too much for a little ROI, members of Congress? By the way, here's our friend Crazy Bernie.
I will not be intimidated by the NRA.
By the way, the coolest thing about Bernie Sanders is before he decided to run for president, I think he had like an A+ rating with the NRA, or at least an A.
We will pass gun safety legislation which greatly expands background checks, which does away with the so-called gun show loophole.
Right. We've taken this program to gun shows. We've had a good time with people at gun shows. We love gun shows. And I can remember a young man by the name of Charles. He has a son named Chaz. Very conservative people. Used to see them at church all the time. And then they moved away to Fruitland. They love the Fruitland. They love the farm. Really works for their Idaho lifestyle, right? And I can remember being at a gun show and doing this thing they call remotes, which means you're at a table, sometimes with a tablecloth that has the name of the station on it, the call letters they call it. And I can remember Charles buying a weapon, but he had to do the instant background checks there. So there are no gun show loopholes, right? Here's Senator Chris Coons saying, I'm relevant even though I'm a senator from Delaware.
Our bill would make sure that state law enforcement is promptly notified when someone fails a background check. I've been talking with Republicans, with Democrats, with the White House over the August recess. I'm hopeful President Trump will actually lead on this issue next week, take a position, stick with it. The American people deserve no less.
Right. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Your thoughts next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. And blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning. Don't forget, coming up, thanks to Capital Credit Union, Team Mazda Subaru, we'll be rolling this Friday. We're going to be at Nampa Christian. Looking forward to that. The first time we've been at Nampa Christian. We've had people over the years say, Kevin Miller, why don't you go to this school? Why don't you go to that school? And if you have a local school that you would like us to be at, like Eagle High School, like Columbia. By the way, we need to reschedule Columbia. We would love to do it. Since 2013, Promote Our Schools, Secure Our Future has been making a difference in the lives of Treasure Valley kids. Couldn't do it without CapEd Credit Union and Team Mazda Subaru. And it's something that isn't done anywhere else in the country. Program totally unique to the style of radio that we do, which is talk radio, and totally unique to radio itself, where we take the classroom and turn it into a studio. And you never know what you're going to get when you're talking to the kids. And something else, I just would like to say this to you, that if you really want to know what's going on inside the schools, you have us there. Some schools, they're uncomfortable with us being there. Maybe they don't like the content of this program, the content of this radio station, and that's okay. We're not for everybody. But it's amazing the schools that really get it, and then the others that look at us very suspicious. What are you hiding? 6:23 is our time. Let's go to your phone calls. And Doug from Mountain Home joins us. Hello, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah. Hey, I was listening to Lars Larson, a couple nights ago, and I know you have him on there on your show quite a bit. Ask him about the name of this man. He lost a daughter in that shooting in Florida school. What year? Was that Parkland?
Parkland, yeah.
And he wrote a book, and this guy was on there for, half an hour. Lars had him on there through a few breaks. And he's been just preaching preaching and checking things out. And he moved out of Broward County. He can't even live there no more. And, Kevin, they don't care about kids. I mean, if we really look into the deep of this stuff, like Schumer, and he's just one of my name. I can't stand him. But you've always heard me preach about George Soros. I'm telling you what, he could be Satan himself. The only reason they use this stuff for the kid, against, we got to protect the kids. They ain't protecting the kids. They could care less about them. If they didn't have kids getting killed, they would have no dialogue. They'd have nothing to go to keep pushing to take our guns from us. Anyway, they're doing, you listen to this guy that wrote this book that lost his daughter. They have made it in these schools, and California just passed it too, to where there is no, I'm not good with words, Kevin, help me out. There's no reliability. That ain't even the word. I mean, them kids that are in trouble and doing this stuff, they're not even accountable for it. And if the kids that are trying to protect themselves, how dare you try to protect yourself? Well, they're the ones in trouble.
Right, here's another thing, and these teachers today will tell you, and there are a lot of great teachers, and they get a bad rap, but you have parents that look at school as daycare, and their attitude is, you better just take care of my kid, and my kid is right. You have people that teach in colleges that if the parent writes a bad review, well, they get hauled to the principal's office. And, Doug, I can say this until I can't, until it's over for me in this program. But, the inmates are running the asylum across the country. And we don't want authority. We're everybody's a victim. We don't want to be offended. And it's darn right crazy.
It is. And that just what you said about a daycare, this guy says that. People, you parents, you got to have to wake up. You want to protect your children? Wake up. God is the answer. And I mean, they have kicked him out of our country. And who do you think's running this, people? It's somebody called Satan. And these politicians do not care. It's their way to stay in and to just pound the drum, take the gun away. It ain't the gun. It's them people right there. They're the ones that the red flag should be raised up on, folks. They don't care about your kids. They don't care. Kevin, thank you. Talk to Lars Larson about this and get the name of this guy out, people to read his book. I mean, I'm going to try to find it. It sounds like the whole country needs to read this.
Roger that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Glad that Doug is fired up on the right side this morning. 627 KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Don't forget the KIDO Talk Radio app. It is free. You can go to Google Play. You can go to the App Store, and you can find out things that are going on here. You can get an app alert. And as I said, it's funny. I don't know about you, but when it comes to getting stuff on my phone, like every day, maybe you have your email set, and then all of a sudden you're bombarded. And then if you have like those little watches and it zaps you every time you get it, there's no break. Well, one thing that we pledge to do at KIDO Talk Radio is we're not going to zap you with an app alert like, hey, Kevin Miller is walking to Caldwell. Hey, look, Sean Hannity mentioned Mountain Home, Idaho. Now, if it's something significant, yes, you'll get that app alert. But we're not going to spam you. We understand that we are guests, and to earn any type of real estate on your phone is a privilege. So take a look, give us an opportunity, and by the way, you can take your phone and the app anywhere, but it's free. You don't have to go through Secondhand Louie. All you have to do is, and nothing wrong with Secondhand Louie when it comes to getting an app, but it's just under KIDO Talk Radio. Very easy. We make it very easy for you, and we want to earn that privilege. And plus, you'll know when the newsletter comes out, which is free as well. All right, coming up next, Congress continues to get back to work. Boy, wouldn't it be nice? How much real vacation do they get? And people are challenging the President of the United States. All that and more coming up. Stay tuned, stay informed. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. If you missed it over the weekend, another presidential contender, this time a Republican, going after Donald Trump. Let's take a listen from This Week with ABC's George Stephanopoulos. People are bragging about whether or not there should be a fight to keep private insurance, right?
George, I was in central Pennsylvania yesterday and walked into a diner, to get something to eat, and a woman came up to me, recognized.
No place in New Jersey?
No. Diners we got, sir. Rob, diners we got. We got no problem there.
I could save you on the travel bar.
It was 3 hours, but it was well worth the omelet. It was great. And a woman came up to me yesterday and said to me, Governor, please tell the president to tell these Democrats to leave my health care alone. Now, this was the only thing she said to me. Then she said, thank you, and she walked away unsolicited. That part of Pennsylvania is going to be key to what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. And if the president holds that coalition and wins Pennsylvania, this election is over.
But did you respond and say, but the president wants to repeal your health care without a replacement? And
no, I was ordering
I
got to tell you the truth. I wasn't worried about that, but it tells you what's on people's minds.
I'm sending a crew to see if you tipped really well.
There we have it from this week. We'll get back to that in a minute, but joining us now, talk a little bit about your car, the future of it, or if we're all just going to drive big SUVs and big trucks. Jeff Manasso, Fox News Radio. Jeff, good morning.
Hey, my friend, good morning. We're going to be driving the old Beetles again. So after killing the Beetle in July, Volkswagen plans to bring it back to life. It is the company's teaming up with a German company called E-Classics to develop a factory-approved conversion of an electric classic Beetle. Not the new Beetle, but the classic Beetle. And we don't know anything about pricing or availability yet, but a prototype for the electric Beetle is going to be unveiled this week at the Frankfurt Motor Show. Volkswagen says it's also working on a similar electric package for the vintage microbus. How cool would that be? Even as the company plans an all-electric modern version, modern reboot of the microbus. So it's got a couple of different things going on the electric side. It's also announcing that it sold out of its limited edition of its brand new ID3, a new generation electric car. Kind of has an exterior of a VW Golf, but it's got a range of 261 miles. And it's the first of 70 electric models that Volkswagen Group plans to release over the next decade, including the Audi e-tron and the Porsche Taycan. So while many of us are going to crossovers and SUVs, electric seems to be where we're going at some point. But the Fiat 500, that won't be part of the equation. It was launched in 2007, introduced here in the U.S. in 2011. It's now dead after this year, thanks in part, the company says, to diminishing sales as consumers move over to crossovers and SUVs.
Yeah, back to the microbus. We still see those driving around from the old days. And, Jeff, when we were kids, they were out for a little while. And then, boom, they're... Yeah.
I'm not sure I could drive one of those things, but I do. I love them. You know, I got at 6'3", I need the leg room, and I'm not sure it's there in one of those things, or for that matter, the Beetle. But I love looking at them. I think they're cool cars, both the classic Beetle and the classic microbus, and to bring those back looking the same, new versions of them, and all electric, I think that's pretty cool.
Well, we think you're pretty cool. Any thoughts on the NFL Week 1, sir?
Week 1 was good, I think, for us in the NFC. But you know, it was fun football to watch. You know, Kansas City, New England. I won't even get into the Antonio Brown thing, but you guys look like you're on fire and ready for the Super Bowl. I mean, it's you know, tough team.
I was cheering for you the other night. Glad you had a victory there in Lambeau.
You know, being that I work here in the city of Chicago, you know, I've got all my Packer gear on my desk. I wasn't loved on Friday, to say the least. But they're a great group of people, and they get it. They get it.
Jeff Manasso, we get you. Thank you, brother.
You bet.
Now, there we have it. By the way, that was at Soldier Field, not Lambeau Field. By the way, big story we're talking about, the talks with the Taliban canceled. Taking your calls at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. 3 people challenging the president. We'll get your thoughts on that. And e-scooters, convenience or a hazard?
President Trump said that he canceled that meeting because of the violence in Afghanistan. He was supposed to meet with members of the Taliban and the Afghan government to talk about withdrawing about 5,000 U.S. troops. Remember, troops have been in Afghanistan for almost 2 decades. This does come just a few days before the marking the 9/11, the 18th year since 9/11.
By the way, coming up, we will have a special show on Wednesday about September 11th, where we look at what happened in real time. That will be our entire show that day, and we hope you tune in because we must never, ever, ever forget. Let's go to Boise. Hank, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Hank.
Good morning. There's a long history that you had with the British. The first Afghan War, 1839, the second one in 1842, which was a disaster for the British. You had the British having the fight in Afghanistan and the Malacan Field Force in 1897, which was a campaign that Winston Churchill participated in, plus fighting in action during the 1920s and 30s by the British in there. So there's a long history of other countries fighting in there. You had Russians in the 1870s and later back in the 1970s, a couple incursions into Afghanistan. Of course, it turned out to be a disaster for the Russians. The problem is this. In order to affect real long-standing change in Afghanistan or in the Middle East in general, you have to have the political will to stay and occupy. It's basically change the institutions and bring about, and this means you got to be there for several decades. The British were in India for 2 centuries. It had enough. They were there long enough to affect the culture and the climate of the country enough to have a fairly stable democracy in India. It requires a long-term presence, and there's not the political will in this country or in Europe anymore for anything of the sort. And it's wrong to send people out there not to win these wars. Like Obama put these restrictions on people in Afghanistan, which unnecessarily killed a lot of our people.
Well, you remember the reprehensive rules of engagement, Hank, that we talked about at the time, and let's go down to it. Look, we don't have the forces, we don't have the political will, as you pointed out, to occupy those people in that country. But what's the solution? Would you be comfortable? Would you be comfortable with the Taliban hanging out at Camp David?
Well, I don't think any good will come out of it in the long term. But the problem is this: how long? Are we going to be occupying these countries for a long period of time? We can't depend on for instance, if the Democrats won't come back to power, the flux and flow of our politics. The Democrats have always haven't reacted in foreign policy responsibly for.
Right. When the libs come back to power, they're going to disarm us and not the Taliban.
That's exactly right. And the problem is that we've been there long enough that we have affected some changes in Afghanistan called Church of the Good. But they're not going to stay with the Afghans when we pull out of there. When Taliban takes over again, it's going to be terrible. Those women.
Right. You're right, and that's what we've talked about. They're going to go after the women.
They're going to go after the women, and there's no question about that. But on the other hand, what is Trump? But the Trump has a point here. I mean, how long are we going to be, occupying, or how long are we going to? It means that you have to have both parties or political parties in this country having a consensus that we have a mission there in the state. We don't have the political conditions in this country to make a permanent occupation, or at least an occupation over a long period of time. When we occupied Europe 70 years after the Second World War, it had a profound effect in changing the
culture. Hank, thank you for the call. And that's an interesting point. You look that we still occupy South Korea. And the Europeans, or the Europeans, whichever you want to call them, for entertainment purposes only, I know it's Europeans, but to wake you up, the Europeans, man, the Europeans eventually figured it out. They could govern themselves. Of course, we occupied Europe because you had crazy Putin, crazy Yuri Andropov, and all the other commies, right? So you got to occupy. How did we do that? How did we have the will to do that? And yet today we have the situation in Afghanistan where we have, 8,000 troops? Liberty Linda joins us now with good old Kay Milley on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. You know, Kevin, forget about Biden forgetting which state he is in. If Biden is in the state of confusion and he can't remember his own name, he will still win the Democratic ticket. You know, all of the others are just so leftist. They haven't brainwashed enough people to go that left in our country yet. Thank goodness. So I think he will still win. I think it'll be Biden and Warren, Pocahontas. And so, you know, well,
right. But on the other hand, you have Mark Sanford, who just declared. You have Mark Sanford. You have Joe Walsh, not the singer, the former congressman, former talk show host. And you have William Weld going after the president. Yeah.
Little competition there, but I don't think any of them are competition. I really don't. So anyway, I think President Trump is the greatest president.
Well, none of them really have a chance to win.
Pardon me?
None of them have a chance to win. Mark Sanford does not have. I mean, look. Hold on. Liberty Linda, let me just jump in here for a second.
Okay.
Mark Sanford was on the rise in South Carolina until he had an affair with, according to the president, a flaming dancer. And then he got reelected to Congress. Then he lost his seat. I mean, it was well documented that Mark Sanford had a beautiful wife, a beautiful family. I believe he was the governor of South Carolina at the time. A dear friend of mine actually broke that story for the Associated Press. And then he would disappear and go hang out with this, I believe she was from Ecuador or from Central or South America. I believe he eventually married her. But, I mean, this guy had this double life that was exposed by the press. Back to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it. I just don't think there's any competition there whatsoever. They're not known that well. They're not out there. There's no competition for Trump with these individuals. And, Trump has done everything that's good for our country. Almost everything is in the plus, is in doing so well. I don't think we would have a country today if President Trump had lost. I mean, he has pulled us out of everything. It's unbelievable what he's done for our country, and that's the way I feel about him. And
that's a shocker.
There just isn't anyone else out there that compares whatsoever to him. And so, anyway, I think he will win again, hopefully. And, Tea Party Bob, if I'd known he was in the area, I would have stopped by and called him and said, hey, let's have a Coke and talk for a while. I didn't know he was out this way.
Well, you never know with him. Liberty Linda, thank you for the call.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Have a great day.
All right. God bless. Hey, coming up next, we'll break down the three contenders to the presidency. Can these three Republicans derail the Donald Trump Express? And are you sick and tired of scooters? Scooter mania, but at what cost? We'll break it down for you next. Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you each and every morning. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:54. We have a challenge in conservative traditional America today. And this really is a nonpartisan issue. Now, maybe over the weekend you decided to check out. Maybe over the weekend you enjoyed the Broncos beating a overmatched Marshall Thundering Herd team. Maybe you love Boise State. Maybe you've moved to the Treasure Valley and you've been indoctrinated that that's the thing to do. It's one of the unifying things. Or you're new to the area and go, man, what are people into? Okay? And you have major companies that all they do is go, hey, we're with the Broncos. And God bless them. Very successful. But the idea of Or maybe you watch college football. Maybe you watch your favorite NFL team. And we all have a tentative for sports. Sports is one of the great unifiers in our country today. You can go into a Walmart or wherever, and somebody will have on a shirt from their favorite town. Most notably, I saw somebody wearing a Chicago Bears shirt the other day, and I go, wow. It's funny, you don't get beat up. Well, in some places you do, I guess, if you're wearing a sports shirt. Now, the other day also in a Walmart was a pretty eclectic Walmart. Not to be confused with, the pretty uniform crowd at Fred Meyer. But I saw a guy wearing Bring Back Obama, and I bit my tongue when I saw that in Idaho. Some guy, it was actually in Fred Meyer last night after church. This guy, Bring Back Obama, and I bit my tongue because I go, what? But everybody has a right to do those things. And when sports people focus in on sports, it's great. Now, there's this situation going on between Antonio Brown and the Oakland Raiders and the New England Patriots. And if this sounds like when Ray Amaya tries to teach me how to do like the audio stuff, the sound thingies as we call them, I'm going to explain to you why it matters next. First, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Thank you, Larry. So here we go with this story. So this guy, Antonio Brown, is a good wide receiver. Wide receiver catches the football. And he didn't like where he worked, so he went from one team to another, from Pittsburgh to Oakland. And during his time in Oakland, they paid him $30 million guaranteed. Well, this guy, as we say in the old days, acted the fool. He put things on social media, said, "You're not the boss of me," really made a jerk of himself, right? So the team has no choice but to release him because he's tape recording conversations between the coach, John Gruden, and himself. And he gets rewarded by getting picked up by another team, the New England Patriots. And my brother Matt last night says, "What do you think about Antonio Brown?" And I said, look, it makes us look bad. It sends a message that you can misbehave, that you can act inappropriately, that you can be a malcontent, and because of your talent, you'll be picked up by another team and make $10 million. Not $30 million, but $10 million. And that's the world that we live in today. As Doug from Mountain Home said earlier in the hour, it's accountability. Had another person come up to me, "I'm so tired of people whining about doing work." It's work, it's accountability, it's transparency that has made America great, and we need to get back to that. Coming up next hour, we're going to discuss that. Hope you're starting your day on the right side. Thank you for joining us. Did you know KIDO Talk Radio is your home for Fox News on the radio? Fox News next. Stay tuned, please.